Joining us now for another Matich Monday is ESPN college football expert and analyst and former BYU national champion Trevor Matich. Trevor, we're getting close to the end of the college football season, but not without some drama for sure. Just your initial thoughts on the first ever college football playoff.
Fantastic. I mean, fantastic. And the best thing about it is the principle of it. That if this were the BCS, it would most likely have been one-loss SEC champ Alabama against undefeated defending champ Florida State in the BCS championship game, and Oregon and Ohio State would have probably played in the Rose Bowl, and we would be wondering whether or not either one of those might be the best team. Just like we're wondering now if TCU might be the best team, but at least we're wondering now with TCU, about 4 teams instead of just 2. So the fact that the 2 teams that would not have made the final anyway are in the final now, and the 2 teams that would have been in the final didn't make it to the final, I think validate the concept of the playoff.
Who had the more impressive win, Oregon or Ohio State? One was over the best team and one was a blowout.
Yeah, I think that Ohio State had the best win. I mean, think about this. The Big Ten champion went down and played mighty Alabama with their 3rd-string quarterback and beat them. Now, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so I think that alone will go down in history as one of the all-timers of a coaching and playing performance.
So with Cardale Jones in Ohio State as the 3rd-string quarterback, they've knocked off Alabama. They beat Wisconsin 59-0 in the Big Ten championship. What kind of a chance do you give the Buckeyes against Oregon in Dallas?
They actually have a good chance. I mean, if you start on defense, the Ohio State defense is actually a better matchup for the Oregon offense than Alabama's was. Alabama is a big, powerful bunch of guys in the front 7, but they're not overly fast. You've got Ohio State that's smaller in the front 7, much more athletic, much more nimble, better able to handle that kind of an offense. And then on the other side of the ball, you've got a powerful offensive line, and that's what you need to start with because Oregon will attack you. And if your offensive line can't handle that attack, then you have other trouble. So I think it's pretty good. You still have the same problem, though, as you had against Alabama, and that is you've got a rookie quarterback playing for the 3rd time in his life as a starter against a Heisman Trophy winner quarterback. And the question is, can he do it 3 times in a row? And if he can, Ohio State has a very good chance to win this game.
Trevor, how validated do you feel that Florida State lost to Oregon?
I don't really feel validated. All year long, Florida State Twitter has been all over me because I haven't put them at number 1. As a matter of fact, it's not high enough for them to put Florida State at number 1. You have to put them at like 0.7. Number 1's too low of a number for them. They're upset about that. I had Florida State at number 4 in my final poll, but I had them as low as number 7 over the course of the regular season because they were basically a one-trick pony, where quarterback Jameis Winston throwing to Rashad Green and then to tight end Nick O'Leary, all 3 of them will be in the NFL, was all that they had. And as time went on, they improved their offensive line. Young playmakers started to emerge on offense, and they became a better team. So I don't see myself as validated that Florida State lost because I didn't see them as being that high. I just think that the right thing happened, and I think that Florida State, has a lot of talent. They made it to the Final Four, and they deserve tremendous credit for that because of losing as many guys as they did to the NFL. We talk about the talent that they have this year, but a lot of it is very young, and they still have yet to replace a lot of the leadership, especially on defense, that went to the league in this last draft.
ESPN's Trevor Matich with us on BYU Sports Nation. Another Matich Monday. Trevor, aside from Oregon and Ohio State, every other Division I college football team now has officially entered the offseason, if you will. What's the conditioning mentality for a team like BYU and for all the rest of the teams that are now done with their bowl games and are getting ready for the next season?
Well, coaches want to start yesterday and start hammering it hard, and that's the worst thing you could possibly do. Players need a chance to rejuvenate physically, but even more than that, rejuvenate mentally. College football season is long. There's a lot of pressure. It's a grind, and you need a chance to just get away from it. You don't stop working out because you want to maintain a certain minimum base of conditioning and strength, but the players need to get away, not just from the game, but from the coaches and from each other. So that's a good thing. But then as you roll into, late January and you get into February, now you start to just pick it back up. And I think the most important thing to do, and what the best programs do, is to erase memory of the previous season and to think about next year. Have everything focused on the positive of what you want for this upcoming season. And BYU has a lot of positive things to build towards and some very clear areas of improvement that they are fully capable of making. We've talked before about how the offensive line improved from the year before to this last year. They've got to improve again. And they know how to do it. They just need to go to the effort to do it. So as they go into the off season, it's important to not think about last year so much. Think about tomorrow.
It is not anticipated that Taysom Hill will participate in spring ball due to recovery for his broken fibula. As of now, it appears that McCoy Hill, who didn't take any meaningful reps in the fall and isn't necessarily in the future plans as a starter, would take all the reps at number 1 in spring, Trevor. Is that an issue for BYU going into 2015 at all?
Yes, it'd be an issue for anybody because you've got chemistry and timing that get built during spring training. You learn about how teammates will respond to the starting quarterback. And if it's Taysom Hill next year, and I certainly hope it is, the only reason it wouldn't be would be health reasons, then you've got to evaluate the players that would be playing around him. How are the running backs, the receivers, the timing of the offensive line, all those things with Taysom pulling the trigger? And they'll just have to sort of speculate at that and go generic without Taysom in there. They'll get a pretty good idea. But there are things that you learn once you put people together. It's like a band where you have a pretty good guitar player, you have a pretty good bass player, but you put them together and all of a sudden magic happens because of their chemistry. And these are things that they will not be able to see as much as they would like during spring because Taysom probably won't be playing.
What kind of a transition do you expect once Taysom does get healthy? And do you think that BYU will be ready to go in early September if Taysom isn't able to participate in spring ball?
Yeah, they will. One of the advantages of knowing Taysom is still not out of the woods is that they'll have to get people ready. And another part of the thing is that leadership in the locker room knows that they'll need to get ready because when Taysom went out, they lost 4 straight games. And they were good enough to pull a couple of those games out of the fire. But they didn't get it done in part because they just weren't together enough. Not from a standpoint of camaraderie, but from a standpoint of kind of knowing how to work in this new paradigm. Well, that'll take them there in spring, and possibly even the start of summer. They will be working and practicing in the paradigm that they will need to win with, and that makes a tremendous difference.
What kind of goals do you think BYU should have prior to spring in terms of off-season conditioning, especially right now where Jay Omer retired and they don't have a strength and conditioning coach?
Well, they're going to have to, continue on the go fast, go hard process. Talking to Jay and to Robert and I and to Bronco Mendenhall over the course of last off season, they mentioned that they've had to completely change the way that they condition. In other words, instead of conditioning for traditional football, which is burst and rest, they're conditioning now more like Australian rules football, which is sprint, jog, and never stop. The idea there is not to be able to gear up for one big maximum 100% effort in a play and then take a breath for 30 seconds while the other team huddles or while you huddle and then do it again. The idea is to be able to be at 80 to 85% starting in the first quarter and then continuing all the way through to the fourth quarter, because sometime in the third quarter that other team will drop below 80, 85%, and now you're going to have the advantage. So that's the kind of conditioning that they will do, assuming that they go forth with the go fast, go hard, which I think is still a good idea.
Would you have thrived in that offense?
No. Actually, yeah, I think I would have. And the reason is that I was never the biggest, strongest guy on the block. I was always the guy that would try to outthink you, and I was about quickness and leverage and technique. And so the go fast, go hard is perfect for that kind of a style. And the truth of it is, the way you run the read option and things like that, you don't need to necessarily crush people, blow them off the ball. It's nice if you can, but you don't need to. You need to fit correctly. You need to have the right foot placement, the right leverage, and then just sustain. And if you can do that, that's good enough to make the whole thing work.
ESPN college football insider and analyst Trevor Matich on BYU Sports Nation for Matich Monday. Trevor, you talked about BYU needing to forget the season, any team for that matter, forget about last season and move forward. However, coaches are always going to look back at the previous season and say, well, what could we have done better? What's the number one lesson that we need to learn moving forward? You've talked about the offensive line. What is the number one lesson that BYU needs to take from the previous season and utilize in 2015 to become a next-level Division I college football team?
Well, I think they need to make sure that their pass rush is squared away. You know, they had some of their key pass rushers injured at various times during the season, and that was a problem. And they didn't have an answer to that. They weren't able to get rush from their defensive linemen. We're talking linebackers now that we're getting there. And then when they got injuries in the secondary, that really became a problem because now they weren't able to cover as well. They weren't able to cover as many receivers well when the offense spread it out and went to 4 or 5 wides. So I think being able to generate a pass rush from the big guys with their hand in the dirt is a big priority to be able to develop this offseason and to be able to recruit to.
Trevor, great to have you with us. Enjoy the national championship game a week from today. We'll talk to you before that again, and we exhort you to have your predictions ready when we come asking you next week. You got a week to think about it, so have it ready in a week.
Okay, I stand ready to be exhorted.
Sounds good. Thanks, Trevor.
Thanks, guys.